She told me she needed space and blocked me. Later, she called me from a restaurant. It's our anniversary. Where are you? I replied, I'm already celebrating my single life. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind of bright and ordinary Colorado morning where the sunlight comes through the kitchen window with absolute perfection, catching the edge of the granite countertop. My usual routine was set like clockwork. The coffee was ready. I was folding the newspaper and reaching for my toast when Brooke leaned against the refrigerator with that unreadable expression she had mastered so well. I'm leaving, she blurted out as if she were talking about picking up groceries from the store. Just for a week. I need time. At first, I did not catch the tone. I looked up with a half smile. Time? What? She did not blink. She just took a sip of her orange juice as if it were a cocktail at a beach resort. To think. To feel normal again. I slowly pushed back my chair. Normal how, Brooke? You live in a house you decorated. You drive the SUV you chose. You have yoga classes, brunches, streaming shows, and a husband who has never forgotten a single anniversary. What is not normal about that? That is when her gaze narrowed, cold and silent. You are too stable. You never change. I can no longer breathe in this life, Brian. My voice caught in my throat. So you are leaving because I am constant. She shrugged. It has nothing to do with you, actually. I just need space. You blocked my number, and you call that space. I will unblock you next week, maybe. She grabbed her already packed bag as if she had only been waiting for this moment. I planted myself in front of the door, heat rising in my chest. You are leaving and just leaving me standing here asking myself questions. I am not asking for your permission. The front door creaked when she opened it. My voice broke, not from tears but from something sharper. Then do not come back. She froze for a moment, not long, but enough. Then the door slammed behind her, the noise slicing the silence like an axe. The room went still. This silence was not peace. It was pressure, as if all the air had been sucked out. My legs stayed locked. My hands clenched at my sides. I did not follow her into the driveway. I stayed there. My wife had just left with the same ease as if she were taking out the trash, and I was still standing in slippers, breathing heavily as if I had just run a mile. I stayed frozen in that spot longer than I want to admit. I could hear the hum of the fridge, the ticking of the clock on the wall, and the distant sound of a lawnmower down the street. It was a beautiful morning in reality, but inside me it was nothing but storm clouds. I was 43 years old, a civil engineer. For 2 decades I had built other people's dreams while quietly funding my wife's whims. Brooke loved designer candles, yoga classes, and Sunday brunches with women who smiled through clenched teeth. I never complained about it. I made sure the mortgage was paid. I took care of her parents when they got sick. We were not extravagant, but I thought we were stable. And maybe that is what made me blind. I never saw her contempt growing behind her casual smiles, and now this was her first honest sentence in months. The door was still vibrating in its frame. The next evening, I found myself sipping a beer at the End Zone, a low-ceiling sports bar wedged between a hardware store and a tax center in our small Denver suburb. It was the kind of place that still smelled of stale beer, even though smoking had been banned there for 10 years. The TVs were broadcasting a college football game that no one was really watching, and the lighting was dim enough that you did not have to justify your expression. Scott slid onto the stool next to me with a half nod. You look like a guy who has been asked to hold a pulled grenade. I let out a dry little laugh without looking up. Something like that. Scott was my oldest friend since 7th grade. He had been my best man at my wedding. He was my niece's godfather, and he was the only person with whom I never needed to sugarcoat reality. That probably explained why I had not told him anything until tonight. She left, I finally said, staring at the foam on my beer. She packed a bag and walked out the door yesterday morning. Scott stopped right in the middle of a sip. Gone like gone, or gone like a coffee break. She said she needed a week to figure things out. That is not a coffee break, man. That is a warning shot. I rubbed the back of my neck. Stop it, Scott. Maybe she just needs air. I have been the same for too long. I work. I mow the lawn. I do not surprise her with trips to Napa Valley or midnight dances in the kitchen. He sneered. So now being a good guy is a flaw. I exhaled slowly. Maybe she is just bored. Maybe she needed to feel the absence. Scott's voice cut in. No, Brian. She blocked your number. I looked at him, surprised by the harshness of his tone. He leaned toward me, his voice low but firm. You do not block someone's number unless you are doing something you do not want them to know about. The sentence hit harder than I would have thought. I shifted on my stool, trying to keep a neutral face. You think she is involved with someone else? I think she is acting like someone who has already made her decision and did not see fit to include you in it. I looked down at my glass. She said it was only for a week. Scott shook his head, frustrated. Brian, listen to me. You are trying to play the good guy here. I get it. But this is not normal. Marriage is not about temporary exits. You cannot just disappear like a ghost and leave your partner in the dark. I stayed silent, chewing on the rim of my beer glass. He softened then. I could hear it in his voice. I am not telling you to go burn the house down. I am just telling you not to kid yourself into believing everything is fine. There was a long silence between us, the kind that only exists between men who have known each other long enough not to need to fill the gaps. Then Scott took out his wallet and slapped a few bills on the counter. I am not trying to bring you down, man, he said softly. I just do not want to see you take the blame for someone else's disrespect. He stood up, putting on his jacket. You want to talk about it again? I am here, but do not let her rewrite the rules just because she is bored. With that, he squeezed my shoulder and walked out into the cold. I sat there for another hour, finishing my beer and playing his words over and over in my head. Was I trying too hard to believe the best about Brooke because the alternative would reduce everything to nothing? Was I clinging to the version of her I had married while ignoring the one she had become? The bar was starting to empty out. Somewhere a buzzer sounded and a game ended. I stared at my reflection in the mirror behind the bar. Scott was right about one thing. Marriage does not work like that. And there was something in Brooke's eyes that morning. That coldness was not the attitude of someone having doubts. It was the attitude of someone who had already crossed a major line. I did not want to believe it, but denial does not put out a fire. The call came just after 9 p.m. I was half watching a documentary and half trying to convince myself not to text Brooke. The living room was quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence where every creak of the floorboards echoes as if regret were coming to sit beside you. My phone vibrated on the coffee table. Brian, you need to come downtown right now. I will explain when you get here. I did not ask any questions. His voice was brief and urgent, and something deep inside me told me this would not be something I could brush off or sleep away. By the time I parked in the parking garage next to the restaurant he had mentioned, I could already see his black SUV parked at the edge of the lot, facing the large bay windows of the riverfront grill. I got in, closed the passenger door, and barely had time to breathe before Scott muttered to me, "Look through the back window." The booth against the wall. I followed his gaze, and there she was. Brooke, her hair done, wearing a lipstick I had not seen in months. The blue dress I had given her for our wedding anniversary last year. The one she thought was too dressy for a casual dinner. But there she was, wearing it like a badge of liberation. Sitting across from her was a man in a custom navy blue suit, tall, clean-shaven, with a smile way too broad to be innocent. He was not just chatting. He was laughing. Her hand brushed the guy's wrist once, and he did not flinch the way a mere coworker would have. He leaned toward her as if he were used to it. For a split second, I could no longer feel my hands. My breathing became short and fast. I grabbed the door handle without thinking. Scott grabbed my sleeve with a firm grip. "Do not go in there," he said. He did not raise his voice, but the weight of it stopped me. I stared at him. "You knew she would be here." He nodded slowly. "My cousin saw them last week. Same guy, same vibe. I had to be sure before saying anything to you. She told me she needed a break." I muttered, my knuckles white. Scott took another look toward the restaurant. "She took one right on someone else's booth." Rage coiled inside me like a spring. "Let me go in," I said. "She wants space." "Fine, but she does not get to act like I do not exist while she plays house with this clown." Scott tightened his grip. "If you storm in there making a scene, she wins." I blinked. "What are you talking about?" "She will turn the situation around. She will say you humiliated her, that you acted unhinged. Suddenly, you become the angry husband she had to flee. That is the story she will tell everyone." I let the idea sink in. He was not wrong. It was exactly the kind of way out she would take, innocent until it became inconvenient. And after that, you were the problem. The heat in the SUV was becoming suffocating. I rolled down the window slightly, letting in the freezing cold of a downtown December. "I want to break something," I said in a trembling voice. Scott looked at me and replied calmly, then break her little game instead. I stared at the flickering candles inside the restaurant. The way Brooke leaned back in her seat as if she did not have a husband at home whose world had just collapsed. And then I did something unexpected. I stayed seated. I did not storm in. I did not make a scene. I just sat there in silence, letting the weight of what I was seeing harden into something deeper than rage, clarity. She had not just left. She had moved on. The SUV seemed to shrink by the second. Scott had not said anything since he held me back by the door, but I could feel him watching me, waiting to see which version of myself I would choose. The silent one, the broken one, or the one ready to shatter windows with his fists. But something in my chest refused to calm down. I cannot just sit here and watch her make a fool of me, I muttered, pushing the door open before Scott could stop me again. I am not going to break the furniture. I just want her to see me. That is all. Brian. But I was already outside. The restaurant was warm and golden, the kind of glow people associate with anniversaries and second chances. The second I walked in, I saw her booth against the wall. Her back was to me, and she was still laughing. That laugh used to belong to me. Her companion had his hand resting on the table, dangerously close to hers. He was in the middle of a story, judging by his attitude, gesturing with a charm so polished you could guess he had played this part dozens of times, maybe more. I walked straight toward them, each step cutting through the hum of conversations like a ripple on still water. Brooke looked up at the waiter, and then she saw me. Her smile faltered mid-sentence. I stopped at the edge of the table without saying a word. I did not need to. Her face told me everything. Brian, her voice dropped to a whisper. It is not what you think. I let my gaze go back and forth between the two of them. The man, well into his 40s, with an overpriced watch and not a hair out of place, froze like a deer about to hit a windshield. He did not speak. He did not nod. He just stood up with sudden urgency, grabbed his coat, and disappeared through the side exit as if fleeing a fire. Brooke watched him leave, then turned to me, her cheeks flushed and her eyes wide. I was going to tell you. I raised an eyebrow. Tell me what exactly? She stammered. He is just someone I knew before. I ran into him, and we thought a dinner would help me think. I replied calmly. Is this the kind of clarity you were looking for when you packed your bags? She looked nervously around her, as if the linen tablecloths were going to come to her defense. You are making a scene. I shook my head. Not yet. A moment passed. Her shoulders slumped as if she expected yelling, tears, or accusations. But I gave her none of that. I turned around and left. No explanation. No insult. I just walked. My shoes echoed on the polished floor. No one stopped me. No one said a word. The air felt heavier with every step, but my spine stayed straight. Outside, the cold hit my face like a slap. I got back in my pickup, gripping the steering wheel until my fingers hurt. Scott said nothing. He did not need to. She saw you, he let out after a moment. Yeah, I replied, staring straight ahead. That is all I wanted. And we drove back in silence. No music. No headlights behind us. Just the sound of the road and the slow, heavy disintegration of a lie I had been living in for far too long. It was exactly 34 minutes after I returned home that I heard the familiar screech of tires outside, then the sound of her keys fumbling in the lock. The door flew open and Brooke burst in like a gust of chaos. Brian, she cried out, her voice already breaking. Please wait. She slammed the door behind her and stood there panting, mascara running down her face, missing a heel, her purse strap slipping off her shoulder. I was still in the same chair where I had sat down when I got back. No TV, no phone, just silence and a fireplace that had not been lit for days. I need to explain, she said, rushing into the room, her voice shaking. That dinner, it meant nothing. I swear, Brian. You took it all out of context. I did not move. She continued. Every sentence came out faster than the last. I was going to tell you. It is just that he texted me a few days ago, and I did not think it would matter. I needed space, and I did not know what I wanted. And my God, please say something. I stood up slowly, not because I wanted to intimidate her, but because I was tired of enduring her monologue. I saw you laughing, I said calmly. She blinked, confused. What? At the table with him, you were laughing. You do not do that with someone who makes you confused. You looked sure of yourself. She took a step forward. It was nerves. It was awkward. I did not know how to react. Brooke, I said, cutting her off gently. You wore the blue dress. She froze. My voice remained steady. You told me once that it made you feel like a desired woman. Do you remember? She nodded slowly. You wore that dress tonight, and you blocked my number this week. So explain to me again how this was just a simple, innocent reunion. Her voice dropped to a whisper. It was just a dinner. I looked at her, really looked at her, her hair slightly tousled from the rush, the corners of her mouth trembling. But behind all that, there was no innocence, only desperation. I walked to the front door and opened it. Brooke, her voice broke. You should go. No, you do not understand. I was not thinking clearly. I did not plan this. It is just, her breath caught. I felt lonely, and you had been so quiet lately. You did not notice anything anymore. I thought maybe you did not care now. I turned around. So your solution to that was to find someone else to notice you. She took a step forward, tears flowing freely. I made a mistake, a stupid and thoughtless mistake. But you and I, we built a life. You cannot throw it all out the window. I did not yell. I did not slam the door. I just stepped aside and pointed at the wide-open threshold. I am not throwing anything out the window, I said softly. I am letting go of something that is already broken. She stood there trembling. I am begging you, she whispered like a final note. I did not answer. She finally walked past me, her shoulders shaking with sobs, a heel in her hand, and stopped on the porch as if she wanted to turn around, to say something that would rewrite the last 5 days. But there was nothing left to say. I closed the door behind her, the soft click of the lock echoing more like a truth than an end. I stood there for a long time, the cold air from outside still clinging to the frame. The house felt quieter, not at peace, but real and honest. I went back into the living room. The silence followed, and for the first time since Brooke had left, I did not feel the need to chase after anything. It was barely 9 a.m. when I heard knocking. Not frantic knocking, not aggressive, just soft and repeated. I stood in the hallway for a moment, still in the t-shirt and sweatpants I had slept in, if you could call it sleeping. I already knew who it was before I opened the door. And sure enough, there she was, Brooke. Her hair pulled back in a low bun, no makeup this time, a small suitcase next to her, the same one she had left with 5 days earlier. Her expression was cautious, like someone approaching a house that might be on fire. Hi, she said softly, crossing her arms against the cold. Can we talk? I did not say anything right away. I just studied her. Her voice was softer than the day before. No tears, no rage, just the kind of quiet, worn-out apology you only hear when someone realizes they have no way left to sugarcoat the story. I did not sleep, she added, her eyes darting to the house behind me. I just have not stopped thinking about us, about this place, about everything we built. I stayed silent, not moving from the doorstep. I know I ruined everything, she continued. But I want to come home, Brian. I want to fix this. I brought my things back. I thought maybe we could. No. That single word came out more firmly than I expected. Her lips parted. Stunned. You do not live here anymore. But it is me. I am your wife. You were. She stepped closer. You are not even going to let me try. I looked her right in the eyes. You made your choice, Brooke. You walked out that door. You shut me out. You left no room for questions, and you certainly left no room for respect. But I came back. No, I replied. You came back because you lost control of the situation, not because you were ready to own up to what you did. Her mouth opened then closed. She was not used to seeing me like this. Not calm, not cold, just resolute. You said it was just for a week, I added. But we both know it was never about time. It was about permission. You wanted to test the waters while keeping your spot nice and warm. I am not that man anymore. Tears blurred her eyes again, but she blinked to fight them back. So this is it. Years together, and I am just a stranger now. I did not flinch. No, you are someone who taught me what I will never tolerate again. She stood completely still, her fingers tightening around the handle of her suitcase. There was a long, heavy silence, and then I saw it happen. Something shifted in her gaze. The realization that the man standing in front of her was not the one she thought she could put back in his place whenever she pleased. I saw it in the way she held her breath, in the way her shoulders dropped, as if all the fight had finally left her. You look different, she whispered. Harder. No, I said, just clearer. She nodded slowly, stepped back, and picked up her bag. I did not watch her walk down the steps. I did not wait to see if she turned around. I closed the door. This time, it felt final, and the silence that followed was not cold like before. It felt earned. It was around 2 p.m. when I heard knocking again, but this time it was not a soft little knock. It was the kind of knock a friend gives when he is not just coming for a visit, but when he is coming to deliver something. Scott was standing on the porch holding a phone in one hand with an expression I had never seen on him, not in all these years. "Are you decent?" he asked. I nodded, stepping aside to let him in. He walked straight into the living room without sitting down. "There is something you need to see," he said, unlocking his phone. "I hesitated to show you this, man, but I would want to know if I were in your shoes." He held out the phone, the screen facing me. The video was a little shaky, clearly filmed from behind a partition or through a window. It looked like the back garden of Tranquility Retreat, one of those luxury spas with massage cabanas and eucalyptus steam rooms. Brooke was easy to spot. Her posture, her voice, and even the way she tilted her head when she laughed. She was sitting on a lounge chair in a robe, holding a glass of cucumber-infused water, and next to her was the same man from the restaurant. Except this time, there was no possible confusion, no way to mistake their body language. They were close and intimate. His hand slid over hers, and they shared a moment that left no doubt about the inappropriate relationship. I watched the entire 10-second clip without blinking. No sound, just silence compressing my eardrums as the scene played out. When it was over, I handed him back his phone. My hands were steady, but my jaw was clenched so tight it hurt. Scott's voice grew cautious. "My cousin works at the front desk there. She recognized Brooke when I showed her a picture last week. She sent me this today. She said she did not want to get involved, but she did not want to leave you in the dark either." I nodded slowly. Scott was watching me. He was waiting. "Are you okay?" he asked. I stood up. I grabbed my wallet and my keys off the counter and walked toward the door. "Brian." I stopped just long enough to put on my coat. "I have to go." "Where?" "To a family law attorney," I replied. Scott followed me onto the porch. "Look, I know it hurts, but do not rush into anything. You have stayed calm this whole time. Do not snap now." I turned to him, finally meeting his eyes. "I am not snapping," I said. "I am just done." His face changed. Then, not worry, but understanding. He gave a small nod and stepped back. I got into my pickup and pulled away from the curb. The video was still burning in my mind, frame by frame. The spa, the robe, the way she lifted her chin to him like a physical reflex. She had not just betrayed me out of a lack of emotional control. She had planned it. She had invested in it. She had lied through her tears, saying she just needed air, all while letting another man cross that line with her. I did not cry. I did not scream. I did not even rehash old memories. I just drove. The law firm was downtown, wedged between a dental office and a real estate agency. The parking lot was half empty. The plaque on the door read Family Law, Carter, Morin, and Brooks. I walked in and told the receptionist I needed to start the divorce process. She did not blink. "Name?" "Brian Wallace." She handed me a clipboard. By the time I sat down to fill out the paperwork, pen in hand, something in my chest finally broke free. Not heavy, not empty, solid, as if a door had been closed from the inside and locked. I was no longer playing fair. I was playing real. Days passed. I did not hear from her. Not after the spa video, not after my trip to the lawyer, nothing but silence. Which was ironic, considering how much she was used to demanding to be heard. Then, on the morning of what should have been our 7th wedding anniversary, my phone vibrated. "Brooke, dinner at the Riverfront Grill tonight at 7 p.m. I made the reservation in case you want to talk. It is still our date after all." She had even added a little champagne glass emoji, as if that lessened the shock of everything that had happened before. I stared at the message for a long minute, then locked my phone and tossed it face down on the counter. That evening, the backyard was lit up. String lights were draped along the fence. The grill was fired up. Beers were clinking. Someone had brought a speaker and let classic rock fill the air. The air smelled of burgers and the winter cold. The laughter was genuine, neither forced nor polite. Just real. Scott stood near the fire pit with a spatula in one hand and a glass in the other. "Are you sure you did not want to do something quieter tonight?" he asked, nudging me. I took a sip from my drink. Quiet was killing me. He smiled. "Fair enough." More friends showed up than expected, guys from work, guys from the gym, even my neighbor Kevin with his terrible jokes and his 2 kinds of dip. People I had not seen in months came without hesitation. They might not have known everything, but they knew enough to understand that this was not a house in mourning. It was a house coming back to life. At exactly 7:04 p.m., my phone vibrated in my back pocket. On the screen, Brooke. I stepped away from the noise to go toward the darkest part of the yard, where the lights did not reach. I did not hesitate. Hello. You could hear soft piano music in the background, the clinking of silverware. The signature silence of a restaurant with white tablecloths. Where are you? She asked in a light but uncertain voice. I smiled. Just enough to feel it, not enough for her to hear it. I am already celebrating, I said. A pause. Celebrating what? I let the words fall slowly and cleanly. My single life. Silence, not even a breath. Then a click. She hung up. I slipped my phone back into my pocket. I turned toward the house and saw everyone still gathered, plates in hand, laughter rising again. I went back to join them, sliding into a chair next to Scott. She called? He asked, handing me another drink. Yeah. How did it go? I clinked my glass against his. Loud and clear. The rest of the evening went off without a hitch. Someone spilled salsa. Kevin tried to play the guitar. Allison from work showed up late with cookies and a story about her dog eating her phone charger. No one mentioned Brooke. No one needed to. It was no longer about her. It was not even about what she had done. It was about what I had stopped tolerating. For the first time in a long time, I was not waiting for someone to come home. I was already there. The party was in full swing. Laughter echoed across the yard. Flames flickered in the fire pit. And I was halfway through a story about the time Scott almost burned down his garage trying to deep fry a turkey. When the front gate creaked, heads turned. She walked in like a storm pretending to be a light breeze. Brooke, wearing the same coat I had given her last Christmas. Hair perfect, face tense. Her eyes swept the yard and found me instantly. Conversations dropped a notch, just enough for everyone to notice the mood had changed. She stepped forward, her heels crunching on the gravel. Seriously, she spat. You throw a party on our anniversary, and you do not even have the decency to answer my call. I did not stand up. I did not flinch. You called, I said calmly. I answered. That was not an answer, she shot back, her voice rising. That was a slap in the face. A few guests politely looked away. Others did not bother. Scott stood next to me, his jaw clenched. He leaned in. Do you want me to ask her to leave? I shook my head. No. She wants to be the center of attention. Let her be. Brooke took a few more steps forward. Her words were flying faster now. Is this what you do? You humiliate me in front of your friends as some kind of revenge stunt. You throw a party to act like none of this ever happened. Like I never mattered. I stood up slowly, letting the dead silence of the yard settle between us. You want the truth? I said. Fine. I turned toward the patio door and walked inside under everyone's watch. A moment later, I came back out with the TV remote in one hand and Scott's phone in the other. Everyone, I need your attention for a second, I said. Conversation stopped. Plates were lowered. Some guests were confused. Others were not surprised. I pointed the phone at the screen. A few clicks later, the spa video started playing. 10 seconds. No sound. Just Brooke laughing, touching the guy's hand, sharing that intimate moment. The screen went black. The yard stayed silent. Brooke's face drained of color. Where did you get that? She whispered, petrified. My friend's cousin, I answered. She works there. Remember her? No. The one you called a busybody with a bad manicure. Guess she noticed more things than you thought. Brooke took a shaky step back, her hands over her mouth. Brian, it was not serious. It meant nothing, I swear. No, I cut in. You do not get to talk anymore now. She broke down right there in the grass. Her mascara was starting to run. Her voice broke in front of everyone. Please, do not do this. I made a mistake. I was lost. I did not know how to talk to you anymore. I thought you did not care. I did not want it to go this far. I did not get down on my knees. I did not comfort her. I just spoke clearly. The lawyers are already working on the divorce. She gasped as if I had hit her. Brian? No, please. We can fix this. You do not have to ruin me in front of everyone. You took care of that all by yourself, I replied softly. She sobbed. But I turned back toward the fire pit where Scott handed me my glass as if nothing had just exploded. "Sorry for the interruption, folks," I said with a half smile. "There are still some esmores left for anyone who wants them." People moved a bit awkwardly at first. Then one or two put a hand on my shoulder. Someone turned the music back on. A few guests backed away from Brooke as if they did not know what to do with themselves. Scott leaned toward me. "Are you sure that was not a bit much?" I exhaled. It was just right. Behind us, Brooke stayed curled up in the grass. A woman finally realizing that the mask she wore had cracked in public, and this time it was impossible to put it back on. When the last guest left, the fire pit had turned into glowing embers, and the night air settled into a dead calm. The plates were stacked. The music had stopped. The conversation still floated like a sweet aftertaste. I was in the kitchen rinsing off the last of the skewers when I heard footsteps behind me. "Hey," a voice said softly. "You forgot some cups on the patio." I turned around and saw Allison holding a small stack of red cups and a half-empty bottle of wine. She was now wearing a baggy sweatshirt and sneakers. Hair pulled back, face relaxed, a far cry from the version of herself I usually saw at the office. We had known each other for years, never anything more than co-workers turned friends over our mutual sarcasm and shared preference for quiet mornings. "You did not have to stay this late," I said, wiping my hands. She shrugged. "You invited me. The least I could do was help you clean up after your public trial." I managed to smile. "You caught that, huh?" I think the whole neighborhood caught that. I leaned against the counter, staring at the wine she was holding. She lifted it slightly. "Promise, no judgment if I pour myself a little. Only if you pour me one too." A few moments later, we were sitting at the kitchen island, 2 glasses between us and the soft ticking of the wall clock filling the silence. "I wanted to tell you," she started, gently swirling her glass. "I have been there." I looked at her. "What do you mean?" "This whole betrayal thing. 2 years ago, my ex, Justin. You never met him." "What happened?" She took a sip before answering. "He had a whole double life I knew nothing about. Not another woman. A whole apartment. I found the lease in his glove compartment. He said it was his space to think. In reality, it was where he went to be someone else." I cringed. "That is brutal." "That is what I thought too," she said softly, until I realized I was not just mourning the relationship. I was mourning the person I thought I was with him. I nodded slowly, letting her words sink in. She looked up at me, her voice a little softer now. "You look lighter tonight, after all that." I thought about it. I think it is because I finally stopped waiting for an apology that was never coming. Once I let go of that, everything else fell into place. She smiled faintly, her eyes warm. "I do not know if I believe you can wipe the slate clean," she added, "but I believe in authentic slates." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. No need to fill it with noise. Just 2 people who had been hurt in the same way, finding a little peace on the other side of the rubble. Finally, she stood up, empty glass in hand. "I should get going, but next time you throw a party, maybe just provide cupcakes and a little less emotional warfare." I smiled. "Deal." She stopped at the door. "You handled yourself well tonight, Brian." "Really?" And then she left. I locked the door behind her, turned off the lights, and stayed in the kitchen a moment longer. It felt warmer to me, not because of the wine, or even because of Allison, but because for once there was nothing left to hide. Just honesty and the slow, quiet return of peace. The next morning, I arrived at the Ridgeview Cafe a few minutes early. Our usual spot, small, tucked behind a bookstore, that eternal smell of cinnamon and second chances. Scott walked in right on time, his baseball cap pulled low, his sweatshirt zipped up. No triumphant entrance, just a friend who had shown up from beginning to end. He slid into the booth across from me and gave a nod. "You look like a guy who just dropped 10 pounds, he said, grabbing the menu he never read. "Maybe so," I replied. The waitress, Lisa, the same as always, brought us 2 coffees without needing to ask. I took a sip, then looked across the table. "Listen," I said. "About the other night at the bar, I did not want to hear it, and I reacted like you were the problem when you were actually the only honest person." Scott waved it off. "Water under the bridge." "No, seriously. I should have told you earlier. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I was doing everything I could to make it easy for you." He leaned back, holding his mug with both hands. "That is what friends do, man. We are there when it counts, not just when everything is going well." I looked out the window for a moment. The snow was just starting to fall, light and clean, without turning to slush yet, just the beginning of something new. You were right, I said in a lower voice. She was not lost. She was already gone. I just did not want to admit it. Scott nodded. Sometimes the truth is not a mirror. It is a sledgehammer. But once it hits, at least you are finally building on solid foundations. We sat quietly for a moment, sipping our coffee, the air between us peaceful. I let out a little laugh. Do you think it is crazy that I feel better now, after all this? Scott smirked. Not crazy, just free. We clinked our mugs together. A small sound, but it meant something. Two men changed by the storm, still standing and finally ready for what comes next. That was the end of my story. I still think about Scott, about the way he stepped in when I refused to see what was right under my nose. He owed me nothing, but he showed up anyway. Comment. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this story with me today. It reminded me how deeply self-respect matters in any relationship we build. When someone crosses a line, choosing to protect your own peace is never selfish. I've learned that setting clear boundaries early can save us from years of unnecessary pain. Taking full responsibility for our own healing is one of the strongest choices we can make. Being gentle and kind to yourself after a difficult chapter truly changes everything. You deserve connections that bring calm instead of constant uncertainty. It's okay to step away from what no longer supports your well-being. Every time we choose peace over chaos, we grow stronger on the inside. I hope this encourages you to reflect on your own boundaries and keep choosing yourself with love. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.